Inside Florida Politics, powered by the USA Today Florida Network.
A golf outing in West Palm Beach became a crime scene this week after the Secret Service foiled another alleged assassination attempt against Donald Trump. Governor Ron DeSantis steps in to investigate, and the fallout from Florida health officials continuing to recommend against COVID vaccines. Hello, I'm USA Today campaign reporter Zac Anderson, and those are some of the stories I'll be discussing this week with three great Florida reporters, John Kennedy, Antonio Fins, and Anna Goni-Lessan. Welcome to the three of you. I want to jump right into the big news this week. Antonio, you've been on the scene in West Palm Beach where authorities are investigating this second assassination plot. It's a location that I'm sure you're pretty familiar with. Trump is there a lot. There's been reporting that this golf course has been a security risk for a long time.
All of it has been a security risk for a long time. Yeah, the golf course in particular, it is a private golf course, 200 acres. That's hard to keep an eye on and hard to, a lot of entry points. But you could see this, even Mar-a-Lago, where it's a walled complex and much more secure. But there have been all sorts of security breaches at Mar-a-Lago as well. We've had a Chinese woman entered it. It was stopped, arrested. All kinds of allegations and suspicions of espionage related to that. We even had a college kid one time thinking, okay, it's kind of a spring break thing. Let me see if I can sneak into Mar-a-Lago. And he did while Trump was there. And then, of course, there's the Doral Resort, which is much more open to the public, hotel and spa and golf course. And we had a guy, 6 years ago, show up in the middle of the night with a assault rifle and start shooting up the place. 5 police officers responded. A shootout occurred. The shooter was wounded. Another police officer in the melee broke his arm. So there have been the security concerns have been here all along. This one, turned out to be probably the most serious because, Trump, although at the moment that the alleged shooter was in the shrubbery with his rifle, the barrel poking out, that the moment that he was spotted by the Secret Service agents, Trump was not yet in his line of sight, but he wasn't far away. And this could have ended up, being another very, very ugly incident. But yeah,
right. Trump was on the fifth. Trump was on the fifth fairway, Antonio. And this guy was hiding by the 6th green, a few hundred yards away. From what I've read and seen and maps and things that have been posted online, he wasn't actually even on the golf course, was he? He was in the fence line, or
he was in the fence line with a scope and a rifle barrel that was poking out of the shrubbery. That's how the Secret Service agent who was walking the perimeter in advance of Trump's movement, that's how he spotted it, took out his firearm and fired shots. So the alleged shooter never fired. But nonetheless, this could have been an extraordinarily serious situation.
But this was a known location, right? I mean, this was an area where photographers would go and you could get a view of Trump through the bushes. I assume that maybe even photographers that you've worked with at the Palm Beach Post have maybe gone to some of these spots to try and get pictures of Trump.
Yes, but it's not that easy. In fact, the most interesting case we've ever had with one of our photographers, Alan Eystone, a number of years ago, was actually getting photographs from a different location. He was repeatedly shooed away from the Secret Service. At that time, however, Trump was the 45th president, and therefore there was way more of a police and security presence. Now, the interesting thing is, if you saw the press conference, the acting Secret Service director talked about this being an off-the-record movement. And what that means is that at a certain time in advance, the Secret Service gets a copy of what Trump's schedule will be on a certain day, and they can do the advanced security work. In this case, Trump's decision to go golfing that Sunday early afternoon was kind of almost a game time decision, let's call. So there's some conversation about these off-the-record movements, and do they heighten the insecurity, shall we say? At the same time, I've talked to Secret Service guys who've worked Mar-a-Lago, who've worked the detail here, and they say, well, at the same time, it's a place that he goes to a lot. I mean, when Trump is in town, this is a course that he goes to almost all the time.
I wanted to ask you about that because there's been speculation about how did this guy know that Trump was going to be there? He didn't necessarily have to know, did he? I mean, this is somewhere where, Trump plays golf on a almost weekly basis or more if he is in town, right?
Yeah, but I think that's kind of an open question. That's what we're trying to figure out, because the fact of the matter is that Trump was away on Saturday, came back, and then decided to go golfing that day. So, there's some chatter that this guy was hiding these bushes for as much as 12 hours. We need this investigation to come out, and so we can see exactly what this guy was thinking. How did he get there? I will tell you this. I will say this, that in previous cases, you follow the case through the system and then it kind of disappears. To be honest, I don't think, that the guy that showed up at Trump at the Doral golf course and the resort back in 2018 that shot up the place, I don't think we ever got an explanation of who this guy was, why he was there, why he committed this act of violence. I think in this case, because of the severity of it in particular, that this could have really been just a shocking and just terrible moment for the country a month or so from the presidential election. Perhaps it will be a little different, but we still don't know a lot about this. In fact, I think we know very little about the totality of it.
Yeah, another close call, not quite as close as Trump actually getting shot in the ear, but it really raises a lot of questions about the security and just the threat of political violence right now in the country. It seems that we're really at a boiling point. Let's talk about the political fallout from this a little bit. Trump nodded towards unity after his first assassination attempt and really, initially was really talking about trying to bring the country together and take the temperature down. We're seeing a much different response here. He's really this time going hard at Democrats, at Kamala Harris, and so is the entire really GOP and right-wing media ecosystem.
Yeah, there was absolutely no ceasefire this time around. If you remember, Zach, we were actually in Milwaukee in the days after the first assassination attempt at the RNC. And, although everybody there, all the delegates, particularly the Florida delegation, was, still very much adhering to MAGA principles and sticking to the guns on policy issues, there was a concerted effort across the board to lower the rhetoric, to lower the tone of the rhetoric. Not this time around. It's been all out verbal assaults and conflict. And I think it just speaks to the tenor of the time. I think it says something that not even a second assassination attempt on Trump can lower the rhetoric, can get people to step away from a lot of this brinkmanship type discourse of, radical lefts and fascists and, the end of the country and the country is going to hell. And, so I just think it speaks to the fact that we're a long way away from any kind of national consensus on discourse. And, I look ahead, if you look ahead to January 20th, regardless of who wins, the one thing that has always set the United States apart from every other country is that there was that one day, that inauguration day, that was bipartisan unity. Everybody came together for the moment to view the peaceful transfer of power. We really didn't see that in January of 2021. And quite frankly, I think it's a real open question as to whether we will see that again on January 20th of 2025, regardless of who wins.
Up next, DeSantis opens his own investigation into the alleged assassination attempt in West Palm Beach. John, it seems like Republicans they're sick of all the rhetoric about Trump being a threat to democracy. They're really taking the opportunity here to say that this is dangerous and to try and turn it around on Democrats. What do you make of that? What are you hearing from Republicans in Florida?
Well, there is that. There's kind of a crescendo of Republicans accusing Democrats of amping up the rhetoric to the point that these kind of things happen, and they have been targeted at Trump. That seems to be something that Republicans are using to their advantage right now that Democrats have so demonized Trump that unhinged elements in our society are reacting to that. It doesn't take much to go back and unspool Donald Trump's history and see the kind of inflammatory rhetoric that he has regularly dished out and is continuing to dish out, even as, for example, his vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance, is calling for Democrats to be discredited because they're using terms like fascist about Trump, and Trump is using the same fascism back at the Democrats.
And people have really pointed to what's happening in Springfield, Ohio, where there's been a lot of animosity ginned up over this question of whether Haitian immigrants are eating pets, which has been widely debunked, but that's really caused a lot of turmoil in that town.
But I guess, if it can fuel anger toward Democrats within the Republican base, right now, this seems to be something about turnout. And Trump sees his path to victory in November as being one where just ginning up that MAGA base and keeping it alive and willing to go to the polls. Because remember, these are voters, many of them historically within that MAGA movement, that are not that regular voters. They are people who really are at times on kind of the fringe of society. Their activism locally is kind of hit or miss. So Trump has to keep them engaged, and I think this kind of inflammatory rhetoric does that, and he's hoping it's going to pay off in November.
It also seems like this alleged would-be assassin is an easier target. There's a lot of information in his background about, he donated to Democrats. He was really involved in causes that are more left-leaning. He actually wrote a self-published book where he encouraged Iran to assassinate Trump. It does seem like he is kind of internalized some of the rhetoric on the left and really allows for a much cleaner narrative to sort of say that he has been motivated by this.
He's an easier foil to be portrayed as somebody motivated by Harris and motivated by her campaign speeches and rhetoric. So it's not stopping, and Lord knows where it's going. Admittedly, there have been questions raised about the Secret Service and its ability right now. When we look at these two assassination attempts in Butler, Pennsylvania, and now West Palm Beach, it's remarkable that these security areas were left unattended by the Secret Service. I think many of us in the general public seem to think that the Secret Service is this sort of infallible organization that outthinks the common man. And in these cases, the fact that there's evidence that this latest assassination attempt had a man lying outside the fence at the golf course for
12 hours. 12 hours just hanging out, camping out in the bushes. Unattended. Yeah, it's astounding stuff. Let's talk about a little bit DeSantis's reaction to all this, because it's really interesting. When it comes to this investigating this second assassination plot, DeSantis is really tapping into this distrust that a lot of Republicans feel towards the federal government, particularly the FBI and the Secret Service. DeSantis is launching his own investigation here in Florida. What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, it gives DeSantis a chance to side with Trump again and to play into this Republican anger about the Biden administration and kind of general conspiratorial distrust of the federal government. The governor raised questions about how the U.S. Justice Department, which is prosecuting Trump on elections interference and the mishandling of classified documents, how they can handle Ryan Ruth's prosecution fairly and transparently.
Basically saying they have a conflict of interest here.
Yeah, that they can't do it. So DeSantis wants his own investigation, assisted by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and state highway safety officials, and led by Attorney General Ashley Moody. It'd be a parallel probe with the federal one, but DeSantis is hinting that he didn't trust the U.S. Justice Department and other agencies involved, suggesting that he wants Florida's to be the lead investigation. And DeSantis, of course, is getting some cheers from Republicans who are also feeding into suspicions about the federal government's ability to conduct this investigation. In Florida, the accused could be charged with attempted murder under state law. That's a crime that carries a maximum penalty of life in prison. And there is no real comparable federal statute for attempted murder. And so far, the federal charges are modest weapons violations. That has also infuriated Republicans. Although it all, by all accounts, it seems like these charges were mostly just to be able to hold the accused, and he's expected to face more federal charges in coming days. But DeSantis's move, it's when you think about it, it's also unlikely to have an effect. The federal government's investigation will take precedent over anything the state tries. There is the U.S. Constitution's supremacy clause, and the federal government will likely have control over the witnesses in the case. And some experts say that any state action is expected only to come after the federal case is finished. State agencies do always play a role in the follow-up to any assassination attempt. Unfortunately, we have a little bit of a history of that. But the DeSantis takeover attempt, that's unusual. Whatever happens, though, the governor has gotten the optics he wanted. He's playing into those Trump campaign themes that the federal government has been weaponized against him. He's been victimized, and that the Biden administration has let him down by not having the same level of protection as the sitting president. We all know DeSantis has never shied away from advancing conspiracy theories. Remember the governor during the COVID years and the panel of vaccine experts he'd muster together to raise doubts about everything that the Biden administration was doing to blunt the spread of the virus. Well, now there's a similar level of distrust of the federal government out there, and it's about the Secret Service, the FBI, and sure, the Justice Department. DeSantis knows that this kind of move plays well with a portion of the Republican base, and that base will believe anything that the Trump campaign says, such as dogs and cats being eaten by Asian immigrants. DeSantis is just getting on board, on an already moving train, and he's looking to help this man Trump, as we all recall, his campaign viciously beat DeSantis during the Republican presidential primary period.
Antonio, John noted that DeSantis is really getting a lot of cheers from Republicans for this state investigation. From what I've seen online, I mean, it's overwhelming. I mean, people were really applauding him on the right for doing this. We know that DeSantis has tried to, move closer to Trump after their very bitter primary where Trump, badgered him and labeled him sanctimonious. But, there's no future for him in the Republican Party if Trump is continuing to antagonize him. And it looks like, they've gone golfing. DeSantis is talking about raising money for him. This really, I mean, if you're investigating an attempted assassination against him, could this really bring them closer together here?
Look, it could. I mean, let's not lose sight of the fact that this big announcement that DeSantis made is he came here to West Palm Beach, not far from Mar-a-Lago, to basically make the announcement of the state investigation. And what he is, and I think John is absolutely right. I mean, what he's trading on here, the currency, is the distrust of the federal government. And in part, it's because in past instances of security breaches, at the end of the day, the federal government really was not very forthcoming or transparent with whatever findings they came to. And part of that is, in all fairness to federal investigators, is you're talking about the security of, at the time, the sitting president of the United States, and then the former president of the United States, and now the Republican nominee for president of the United States, all three are the same guy. But as I mentioned earlier, we never really got to the bottom of why this guy came in to shoot up the Trump Doral, or how he really was able to just wander in the middle of the night into this facility. There was a trial of the Chinese woman on the allegations of, that she had trespassed in Mar-a-Lago and she had all these security type devices with her, but we never really got to the bottom of that. What was that all about? And, and other instances that, again, it just leaves the public out there thinking, okay, but what exactly is going on? So And part of it, again, in all fairness to the federal investigators, is that they are talking about very sensitive security arrangements around one of the top public figures in this country. At the same time, it does leave that space where you can come in and trade on that currency of distrust and suspicion and not knowing what's going on.
Up next, Florida is at odds with the federal government on another issue, COVID-19 vaccines. Yeah, Anna, I mean, DeSantis seems to have just like a preternatural instinct for what is going to push the buttons of the Republican base. Is it surprising to you that he would find a way to get involved in this?
Oh, definitely not. It does not surprise me at all. DeSantis, every single press conference he uses as, a way to chime in on federal issues, whether it's immigration, whether it's, the debate or whatever. He really likes to chime in and give his opinion. I would say this assassination attempt is along those lines. But yeah, he does a lot of stuff to kind of cater to that conspiracy theory, far right base. John Kennedy, he definitely he made a good point, right? That the conspiracy theories about COVID and stuff, when that started, that's something that DeSantis has really held on to. Especially with
let's talk about that, because that's a big issue. It continues to be a big issue in Florida. It was really interesting where DeSantis' Surgeon General Ladapo is continuing to recommend against the COVID vaccine when we have the latest round of vaccines come out. And you've done some good reporting on what the fallout from that might be. We're seeing vaccination rates come down in Florida, not just for COVID, but for everything.
Yeah, you need 95% to for herd immunity, basically, and we're at 90.6. Like when you say 90.6, you're like, oh, that's not bad. That's still an A. Well,
90% seems pretty high. If you were in school, you'd get an A for 90.
Yeah. So basically, we've seen really, like this past summer, we saw a really high incidence rate of pertussis, also known as whooping cough. We have low rates of vaccination rates for kindergartners. That's the 90.6 rate. And so only 90.6% of kindergartners are vaccinated. And
I was reading your story. It has to be up to 95% to have a comfortable amount of coverage so that some of these highly infectious diseases don't spread, right?
Yeah. And so, we had a measles outbreak earlier this year down in Miami, and Ladapo at that time, he also he went against CDC guidance. CDC guidance was to keep all the kids home. He said, no, parents have the right to decide that. DeSantis has used parents' rights for books, for history. Now he's using it for public health. And so, this has been, this state is, from what doctors tell me, it's very easy to get a religious exemption. And so that's what we're seeing right now. And I spoke to doctors who said that people are moving here to the free state of Florida for that exemption. And so we're seeing the results of that. At least that's one viewpoint of why the vaccination rates are low.
And are doctors concerned that things like measles, that we're going to potentially start to see outbreaks if the vaccination rate drops too low?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, this July we had pertussis. I think there were 66 cases, which was way higher than the 5-year average. And measles is something that's not. I don't want measles. I don't know about you. So I don't really want. They're definitely worried, especially for those babies under 1, right? Because the majority of those whooping cough and the majority of some of those very preventable diseases, a lot of them happen to babies under 1 year old.
Yeah, well, it's just another area where we're really seeing the state of Florida clash with the federal government, and that's been a theme under DeSantis for a long time now. Well, we'll leave it at that. That wraps up another episode of Inside Florida Politics. I want to thank our production guru, Rob Landers. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. We're out of here.